Welcome to LinkedIn Live. I'm April Callis-Birchmeier, and today I wanted to talk about the why of change. I think the why of change is incredibly important. It's where all stakeholder engagement with change begins, really, when we start to think about how do we describe the why of the change. Many times changes are sort of us just accepted or started, or we start talking about this change that's going to happen, and we don't really take the time in many projects that I've been on or initiatives that I've been involved in. There's not always a moment in time when somebody says, this is why we're doing this. This is the why of this change and why we must do this. And so today I want to talk a little bit about the why of change is important. I want to talk also about how we can use this why to then communicate with our stakeholders. I want to think a little bit about this digging into the why so that we're able to put it in a relevant, a relatable story or example, or even just a tagline to help people understand not only the benefit of that change, but the risks of not changing, which I think are often overlooked. So, when we're thinking about the why of change and how important it is to really define this change, of course, first thing I do as an organizational change management expert is that I turn to the ACMP standard for change management. And the standard for change management has the very first process group as define the change. And that's a really important indicator to all of us that we really have to nail down what this change is about before we can move into why we must do it. So when we're thinking about defining this change, we want to discern and really be specific about what is this change that the organization intends to adopt to meet a strategic goal or objective. There must be a reason that we're going through this effort. And so some of the questions that we're thinking about with this change is we're thinking about who is going to be impacted, right? Who will be affected by this change? And that's when we start to really dive into more assessment around stakeholders. What's the purpose? What is the purpose of this? How does the change align with our organizational goals? And then also thinking about what are the um, needs that we have and the keys to defining the change. So I always start with asking the who, what, where, when, why questions, right? Like who who will be impacted by this change? Will this change be enterprise wide, or is this going to be in one department? Is this incremental, or is this transformational where everything is going to change? Is this people, process, or technology change? Is this considered something that's going on with another part of a change in the organization, or is this a standalone piece? And then how will we be affected? So when we're clearly defining this change, we are determining the information and the approach is going to help us to implement this. And then the second piece of our standard for change management is determine why the change is required. And again, this feels to me like we're going into that change rationale. What's the rationale for this change? We want to look at the current opportunity, the risks or consequences of not changing, and the benefits of the change. So there are different opportunities that come along. Some leaders I've heard have said, never waste a good crisis. Sometimes when there's a crisis, it's a perfect time to go through a change. If we have a problem suddenly, rather than trying to just reduce or solve that problem, sometimes we can use that as the why of the change. We have this problem, and now we're going to move forward in this why. The first time that I ever really encountered this as a change management professional was really on the first change management initiative I had worked on as a change professional. And one of the things that I discovered in that work was the strategic plan for the organization. I read the 5 year strategic plan. I had never really paid much attention to organizational strategic plans before. I thought they were probably an exercise in writing, and I didn't know that people actually read them and followed them. But because I was trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing in my world, I looked at the strategic plan. I read it probably 3 or 4 times. I enjoyed reading the strategic plan, and it gave me a lot of what Cotter calls ideas about a burning platform, right? So, one of the first steps that John Cotter, famed change researcher, has in his change model is really to create a sense of urgency about the change. And this is where I think looking at the opportunity, the risks or consequences of not changing, and the benefits, this is really where I see that sense of urgency at times. So, in this particular case that I was reading this strategic plan, in this particular project I was on, I did see that there was a need because of, okay, I'm really going to date myself, because of Y2K. uh, there was a need to move quickly on the change, and I was excited by this. I thought, there it is. There's the burning platform. I found it. I went to my boss and said, "Hey, I found the rationale. I found the burning platform for this change and how we can get people to pay attention." She said, "What is it?" I said, "It's Y2K." She said, "Yes, I know it's in the strategic plan, but it's already resolved. We don't have to worry about it." So I kept reading and I found other rationale, other opportunities in that strategic plan, other risks and consequences of not going forward with the change. And of course, the benefits of the change were sort of became clear to me in the reading of the strategic plan. You see, at that time, the technology that the organization was using was completely outdated and they didn't know it. And there was an opportunity had been presented to the organization to partner and be a beta tester for a large software organization that was going to work with my organization to create this fantastic software that others could use. And so there was this amazing opportunity had been presented. The risks and consequences of not doing this at that moment in time was that we would fall behind in terms of our technology. And being behind technologically can be a very expensive place to be. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation with your organization where you are using older technology and you cannot catch up. It's a very difficult uh, chase sometimes. In fact, nearly 20 years after that first initial change project that I was working on, I worked on a very similar project for a very similar organization, but they had never realized the risk and consequence at that. I didn't understand that they realized the risk and consequence of letting their technology get so far behind. And so they were in a terrible situation where they were going to have to, instead of incrementally moving from the old to the new, they were going to have to actually just um, go right to something that was extremely, very different, very new. And so their change journey was going to have to be such a huge training effort, such a huge leap for them. It was really, really difficult, really upsetting for many stakeholders. The change did not go very well. They received a lot of criticism. And part of the reason that it was so poorly executed was that was one of the consequences of falling so far behind, of not being up to date where they should have been technologically, of putting it off and not doing it. So it's really important when we're thinking about the why of change. We really want to think, why now? Why this? Why why do we need to do this immediately? And what will happen if we don't? And that's part of what I consider the case for change. You know, it's this recognition of the organization's vision for the future and clearly identifies the change um, benefits that are going to be realized from going through this effort, this initiative. So you want to include a clear description of the consequences of not changing, as well as the opportunity that's presenting itself and the benefits of change. Um, One of the things that I have seen in not changing, in not moving forward, um, when you see the opportunity and you realize the consequences and risks of not moving forward with change, is that sometimes we get a lack of commitment in the organization, or we start to actually build ongoing resistance. And so, if our change does not have a compelling reason, or if it's considered unnecessary or frivolous or flavor of the month, that can be a real problem for many organizations. So, when we're thinking about determining this rationale, determining the why of the change, defining and determining this, it's really one of the things that can cause a failure is this misunderstood or incomplete change rationale. Uh, we know that that's one of the biggest risks we can have in successfully gaining stakeholder adoption. So we want that stakeholder adoption. We want people to invest and connect and adopt the change so we can realize the benefits of the change. If we don't move forward or we run into resistance because we haven't clearly identified the why, then we're in a world of pain, right? Because now we have to deal with resistant stakeholders and resistance to the change, and that can be really difficult to navigate in many different ways. And I'll talk about resistance in a minute. I also think that the why really is sort of the heart of everything, right? The why is the core. And I'm sure you're well aware of Simon Sinek's TED Talk that he did in 2009. It's called Start With Why. And he talked about the golden circle and about how many organizations had the golden circle kind of backward. The golden circle in his mind was three rings, right? It looks like a target. The smallest ring, the medium one in between, and then a larger ring. And each of those layers is how people connect to information. So, what Simon was talking about in his TED Talk was the fact that many times we start talking about the what. What are we going to do? What are we doing? And and sometimes we start to then go into the how. How are we going to do this? And that's where we begin. And when we begin with the what, like we're changing all of the billing system, and then we talk about the how, we're going to do this, in a big bang sort of approach, and we're going to do it by October. Um, People can get resistant and frustrated because they think, why would you do this? We want to start with the why, and that's where his talk is. The companies, that organizations, that individuals need to understand the why and be excited and connected to that why and actually be inspired by that why before they can move into the how and then out to the what. So it's actually going from the why to the how to the what, as opposed to starting from the outside of the circle and moving in. And so I think there's sometimes confusion. How do we get to that why? But how do we figure it out? And again, we go back to that change definition. How do we define this change? Is this, how are we going to just nail it down in terms of language so we can express it? And then when we move into 5.1.2, which is determine why the change is required, that's when we have to explain the current opportunity and the risks and consequences and benefits. And again, I I think the strategic plan, which many of us know can put someone to sleep if you're having insomnia, is not the thing to show. The way that we want to share this why is through a story. We want to tell a story about why we need this. One of the stories that I had used when I was talking with stakeholders about that first big change management effort I was working on, they could not understand why, and I didn't know how to explain it. I was young and new and didn't figure it out very well. And I was running around doing my own personal errands, and this was on my mind that I really couldn't describe the why in a way that they needed. Um, we had said you need to have updated technology. We need to update the process of how we work together. The people that we're working with um, are growing so quickly. We're never going to keep up with the current process that we have now. We have to use technology. But technology kind of left people cold. They didn't really get it. And I discovered that when I had this in my mind and I was thinking all the time about how to describe the why, that I was at that time running my small children around with me doing errands. And I was running to multiple stores on a Saturday to get everything we needed. And I noticed how much time it took. It was very frustrating to go to all these different stores, like the grocery store and the hardware store. I had to go to the shoe store. I had to go to the bank. I mean, it was just multiple stops with young children, which meant they were in and out of the car seats and in and out of these stores. It was quite exhausting. And then I heard somebody describe kind of this all-in-one store. And so the following week, I went to the all-in-one store, and it was a Walmart. And I walked in, and when I saw that they had groceries, they had a hardware department, they had shoes and clothes, and they even had a Subway sandwich shop to keep my girls happy, I was just thrilled. It took me an hour and a half as opposed to 4 hours to get everything I needed and get out of there and go home and have a great day. So I described our new technology to our stakeholders in this way. This is the why. We don't want you to have to spend 4 hours every day going in and out of all these multiple stores to get done the work that you need to do. What we are building you is this great data super center like a Walmart, where you can go in one place, get everything you need for your work, and then you can come out and you're done. And when we described it in that way, they said, wow, we really want that. We'd love to have something like that. It would make our lives much simpler, much easier. And from that point on, they were on board because of this relevant, relatable story of the why of the change. And that's what I want to encourage you to do, is to create an example, a story. Tell people the opportunity. Tell people the risks. Tell people the risk of not changing, and tell them the benefits of the change. Invite them to help you with that story. You can invite others to help you describe it in a way that's relevant and meaningful, in a easy and quick way to understand it. So when I am trying to create a why to explain to my stakeholders, I look at what my stakeholders are experiencing. I look at current shows on TV. I look at, many people are charging their cars now instead of putting gas in the car. I'm not going to use a gas station example to describe this change, or maybe I will. Maybe I'll talk about, you can do one of two things. You can charge your car, or you can put gas in the car. I think that there are a lot of different aspects in our own lives that we can look to describe that why. And when we use that relevant, relatable story to describe that why, people are inspired and people are connected and people understand what we're doing, what this change is about. I also think that we will always have resistance when we're dealing with change. We're always going to have people who, even when we tell them the greatest story on earth about the why of change, will be frustrated and say, no, I don't want this change. And I think part of it is that there's so many people who just would prefer to keep things as they are. But it's not natural for things to stay as they are. I'm here in Michigan, and today it's incredibly warm and blue sky and beautiful outside. And that's because nature has moved from spring into summer, and we finally have great weather. Now, I have many family and friends who live in Florida, and they have hot weather all year long, which I love. They have hot weather all the time, but they don't have but they have different phases of hot weather, right? Like now it's quite warm there. I was there in the winter and it was really perfect. It was about 70 degrees. And so, of course, we know that nature just does not stay the same, moves on. Things grow, things change. That's the cycle of life. And so I think one of our challenges when we have people who are resisting change is to try to figure out a way to help them connect the change to the natural progression that we all experience of moving from our current state into a future state, which is change. So I think that's a really important key piece to look at. That when people are resistant, we can also ask them why, and we can listen to their why, and we can hear it and understand it and relate it to something that we can understand so we can be helpful to them. I also look for a couple of different types of avatars when I'm thinking about the why of change. And I tend to see 4 avatars where people are one way when things are going well, and then they might flip if we are not giving them what they need to continue to grow during the change. So the first avatar that I think about with that is looking at the commander, somebody who is in command. They're a leader. They're very confident in what they do. But if they start to feel as though they don't understand the why of the change, or they feel that they have somehow been left out of information, they've been maybe not supported in their efforts, that avatar can quickly turn into a fighter. And they will fight and be frustrated. So it's important to ensure that to continue to grow our commanders through the change, we have to feed them with information, current information all the time, up-to-date information all the time. Ensure that they never go out and say something that's old information so that they get frustrated and start to fight with us. The second avatar that I've seen many times that in terms of resistance, on the non-resistant side is the socializer, somebody who's just great socially, connector in your organization and really connects other people to each other. But this socializer can sometimes start to feel unappreciated, and they are not fed with the things that they need to go through the change, which is, again, information, but also recognition and appreciation. And when our socializer is not recognized or appreciated, sometimes they can become a saboteur. When they become a saboteur, they can be pretty snarky and sarcastic and sort of start to sabotage the communication and the change effort. So recognizing that they need to be nourished with appreciation and respect and recognition is really critical. The third type of resistor avatar that I see starts out with somebody who's so team focused and so much a part of the glue of our organization, and that's what we call the understander. This understander avatar is somebody who's well established and they love stability. They may have been in their same type of role for a decade or more, and they really understand what they do, what everyone else does. They understand the organization at a deep level. And sometimes this understander is not nourished with what they need, which is more hands-on, tactical um, connection to the change itself. And they become underminers. They start to speak poorly about the change, the effort. They start to tell other people they don't plan to adopt it or they plan to retire. And they are not at all helpful. And so we have to continue to feed them in their change growth with hands-on opportunities, ways that they can deeply understand things by maybe being part of user acceptance testing or demoing in the system or training. Whatever we can do to help them truly get into the system and start to understand it from a deeper level than looking at it from the outside, that can help to stop this undermining behavior and help them break from that resistance behavior of being underminers to this change. And then that fourth, last but not least, type of avatar when we're talking about change is our detailer. And the detailer is that person that loves details. They love them. They want more details all the time. They want more. Give me more data, more info. And the detailer is a terrific asset to our teams. However, those who are in this detailer avatar can sometimes become derailers very quickly when they become resistant. And the reason that they become resistant is they start to feel like they don't have all of the details they need. They need more details. And they need more preparation. They need more time. And so they start to derail things because they will not sign off on approvals. They won't, agree to something. They will many times go into like this analysis paralysis where they want more and more time and more details to analyze. And they can actually derail the entire schedule of the project and the project itself because they are so resistant by insisting they don't have enough detail yet. And we've given them everything that we think that we know. And so one of the ways that we can really nourish this detailer to prevent them from growing into a resistant derailer is to nourish them with very timely scheduled cadence of meetings. So a weekly meeting with an agenda in advance and a calm discussion around the timelines that we have that we cannot miss and how can we help them have enough information quickly enough to help us move forward. And so I think when we start to express that we understand their needs, we understand the time that they need to really be able to analyze things thoroughly and understand them in a deep way and not derail the entire schedule or project. I think when we can do that, we can help those derailers turn back into detailers and be a true asset to the project. So when I'm thinking about resistance, I'm looking back at the why. When I see people are resistant, I try to create a new why for them. I'll look at my saboteur and give them an updated why that they can get behind that helps them to really connect again to the change. Because those who are going through change have to have somebody to inspire them. We have to have inspiration to hold on to get us through these tough times that we're going through with change. And so I think many times when we start with why, we are really thinking about the ability to inspire others to move forward and to step into the unknown and to get excited about the change because they can understand the benefit. We've told them why this matters, why it will make their lives better, and why we can ensure that their participation in this change won't be easy necessarily, but will benefit them. We'll realize the benefit of that change. And that's why the why of change is so critical. If we can't describe why people should change and inspire them to join us and to move through change, it's very difficult for them to be able to understand and get on board and to adopt our change. But when we can inspire others, when we can share the why in a relevant, relatable, meaningful way for them, we can do anything. And we start to really experience the benefits, the expected benefits that we have coming from change. So that's what I wanted to share with you today about the why of change. If you are interested in learning more about how to do this, it's not um, it's something you must practice really to become inspiring and to be able to share the why of change. And you can join our training. We have our Ready, Set, Change accelerated training and exam prep program. Our next cohort, final cohort for 2024, is beginning on September 23rd. And it goes for 3 weeks. And we will help you understand all of the steps of the Ready framework, how to inspire others to understand and to get excited about the why of the change. And we'll also ensure that you have everything you need to be prepared for and to pass your CCMP exam, which is the Certified Change Management Professional certification. So please go to springboard-consult.com and take a look at our academy. You'll see that our session begins on September 23rd. We already have people signing up for our sessions. I have one person who sent me a note, please hold a seat for me, but it is first come, first serve. And this will be the final cohort of the year. But I'm really looking forward to meeting you there. And I hope that this talking about the why of change can help you to inspire others to move through change more quickly, more easily, and with less resistance. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.